Hello everyone and welcome to another video. This time we're going to be recapping the Pro-Am thus far. We just finished the group stages and talk about the predictions for the upcoming bracket. Obviously we're down to 8 teams. It is now going to be best of 5s from here on out, single elimination. Unfortunately, none of the contenders teams made it out of groups, so we only got Overwatch League teams, but there are some banger matches coming up, that's for sure. So let's start with the group stage. Let's sort of talk about all these teams and what we've seen thus far, because I personally had some hype heading into this tournament of like, there could be a couple of upsets coming from some of the contenders teams. There definitely were. Obviously, in the first weekend, San Francisco Shock losing to Trick Room was an absolute shocker for us. The elephant in the room is that San Francisco Shock, they're playing on incredibly high ping because their players aren't in North America right now. And Finn has actually been quite open about the situation, just being, it's very difficult. They're playing at like 5 a.m. in Korean time. They're having to be quiet because they're staying with their parents. There's just so many issues that are going on with the San Francisco Shock that we're kind of giving them a pass. I know Dallas fans are seething right now, but I think San Francisco Shock haven't really been able to show us what they truly have. Nonetheless, they did make it out of their group going 2-2, but Florida Mayhem were by far the best team in this group. We know how strong their roster is now, but the level of coordination that they have, and they heavily pioneered the Winston, Ana, Kiriko style that enables your Winston to play very aggressive because the Kiriko can follow, and then you have the nano boost to enable that Winston as well. So Florida Mayhem on the back of someone have been looking very strong. Trick Room, unfortunately, only won that one match against San Francisco Shock. They did go on to lose to Timeless and Vancouver Titans. Vancouver Titans were solid as a team. I think it was a 2-1 matchup against the San Francisco Shock. So it was close. Vancouver definitely looks solid, but a little bit of weakness potentially coming in with Punk as the solo tank on this team. Not really able to have that high level of flexibility to the Winston, to the Wrecking Ball. But, you know, Vancouver, I think they're pretty solid, but they're nothing exceptional right now. As we move on to Group B, Atlanta Reign was dominant in this group. And to a lot of people at this point, the top team to look out for in this tournament. They are the best so far from what we've seen. Not just individual mechanics from, you know, Lip, Donghack, Hawk, you know, just Stalker as, you know, a new player coming in from Seoul Dynasty. But I think just overall their strategies are good. Where they're playing the right heroes, the right players. It just looks very coordinated. So Atlanta is the team to beat. London Spitfire looking quite solid as well. Hardy playing a lot of Winston and not as much Brawl was nice to see. They still pulled it out here and there, but leaning into a more traditional style with the Winston. They did try and play a little bit of, you know, Lethal and Sky Ripper. Unfortunately, it just didn't look that good off the rip. But, you know, we'll see as time goes on if they're going to be able to value those players and find positions that they can come in. Lethal seems like the Tracer player and Sky Ripper to come in for that double flex. We were pleasantly surprised by the Los Angeles Valiant. I think considering where we had them previously, anything is better than that. They actually look like a coordinated team somewhat. They're kind of stuck playing this like Ramatra Brawl style on the back of Croy as the only tank. But it worked to some success, but any team that was able to play an effective dive where on maps where Ramatra wasn't very good, Valiant did struggle. But I was expecting them to just turbo suck, and they didn't. Speaking of turbo sucking, the Vegas Eternal, unfortunately, did not manage to convince anyone that their roster actually might do better than we all anticipated heading into this this tournament and this Overwatch League season. It just looks really poor. Unfortunately, Mouthl's hero pool doesn't really work in the current meta. He wants to play Genji, and he tried to play a lot of Genji, but to very limited success. So Vegas Eternal, a lot of concern still on that team. There has been leaks and rumors, but I think it was either Rack Attack or Luke Mino who accidentally leaked their own team Discord that actually had Rhino in the lineup that I think is a great signing for the Vegas Eternal because that gives them that main tank option. Obviously, Vulcan is a solid off-tank player, but doesn't really have the ability to play Winston or Wrecking Ball, and I think Rhino should shore that up a little bit. But if we're being realistic, they heavily need a Tracer player as well because Dove is their best Tracer player, but while also their best hit scan player. And in metas like we have right now, Dove cannot play both of those characters. So Dove needs to be that hit scan. They need to find someone to play that Tracer if they're not going to trust, or Mouthful doesn't have a willingness to play that hero. So right now Vegas is struggling, but there's only so much we can do about that. Saints looked solid, especially on the Wrecking Ball and Winston comps. I think we were excited to see this team play. Unfortunately, they just weren't strong enough to beat the London Spitfire. London showed that they can go and outclass some of these other teams and players. There were some really big moments from these Saints players, and I wouldn't be surprised to see some of these guys making it to the league as time goes on. Obviously, Tree was the hyped up, young gun coming into this. I don't think we saw that incredible firepower that some of us were hoping for. It was solid, but wasn't this young prodigy that was being sold by some people. I actually think King had a phenomenal series. King obviously made it to the league with the Vegas Eternal last year, Paris Eternal last year, didn't have a great performance and sort of fell out of the, Vancouver Titans. Not Vegas. I said Paris Eternal. I was like, I don't think that was right. So it was actually the Vancouver Titans. Didn't unfortunately show a great performance. So went back to contenders, and that can be a death sentence for a lot of players. But I actually think this Prime was a big highlight of King is still a great player. And I wouldn't be surprised if, even the, Vegas Eternal, right? King could be a great addition onto that team to really round out that roster because King has quite a deep hero pool as well. If they're not looking to spend a ton of money, and if King is willing, I actually think King would be a great option for that as well. Obviously, False and Mikey are good takes, and the backline was quite solid. So Saints had a good showing, but unfortunately weren't able to make it out of groups like some of us were predicting. Group C, Boston Uprising. They were not really challenged in this group. You got to see just how strong some of these players are in just in the matchups. They have the double flex with, Izayaki and Twilight. How can you ever doubt that? Smurf's a great player. We got a little bit of Kalios to sort of play that diva as well. And then, Decay seems to be the Tracer player over Striker for right now. But the big storyline is Birdring's back. Birdring still got it. No one ever doubted. For me, I sort of talked about this on Plat Chat, but my concerns lead into the Boston Uprising of, is it going to be cohesive and coordinated when they start going up against teams that can match their caliber of mechanics? We didn't really see that from the Los Angeles Gladiators. Gladiators also a little bit lost in certain times of what to play. I think Dante and Kai heavily struggled in this tournament thus far. Kai just not able to match up against some of these top tier hit scans as of right now. And Dante, the holes in his hero pools and his struggles on Winston really highlighted in a couple of these matches. So we were surprised by the Washington Justice as well. I think they sort of quieted a lot of the doubters heading into this season because they do have a solid team. And I think Ben Best did a great job of showing I'm not just a Reinhardt player, played a lot of Winston and looked to be the better option. The elephant in the room that has been addressed by Get Amaze, the head coach, was Mira coming in for that third map to play the Winston. Essentially, they said, hey, this is what happens when, you have players you're scrimming. They're giving time to all of these other players to just sort of get experience in a match. This is preseason after all. It's not about winning every single match. It's about getting players comfortable, giving them reps. Maybe throwing Mira in third map to play Winston was not a great look for Mira. We're expecting him to be that off-tank, Doomfist, Diva, all that type of style, and he wasn't able to play that. So it just didn't really look very good. Here's the tweet for you right here. Sorry for the late tweet, but I wanted to close Twitter yesterday after all the hate comments. We went super close against two big teams, and it gives me high hopes for our future. The team is determined to work even harder, and we will show you an unforgettable spirit this season. I won't go too deep into the strategy behind Mira on this map, but all I want to say is Esperanza was Mira's map. I value momentum a lot, but we almost never practice the map with Ben Best in. Both tanks are amazing. This is my mistake. Do not blame anyone else, because there was quite a negative reaction coming out from a lot of the fans. Who would have thunk it? Fans overreacting over a Pro-Am match. But if you cut through the noise of, a lot of the hate with that one match, overall, I think it looks quite solid. I think Alpha Yi, as expected, massive powerhouse player, especially on that Tracer. We even got a little bit of Genji that made it look quite good. But, Flora had some good moments, especially on the Hanzo. But I still have some reservations about Flora as a player and if he's going to be able to pull it off. And the flexibility of this Justice roster as a whole. But as I said, it was definitely a good look. Unfortunately, Team Peps did not have a good performance in this tournament. They didn't play any of the aerial style like I was hoping they would on the back of Naga. Just played a lot of this brawl, and then they were trying to play Winston from time to time against really good Winston teams. They just couldn't match up. They went 0-8, unfortunately not winning a single map. I think Wisp had some good moments. I really like the look of Rocket on that Tracer, as we expected, and Chopper as a hit scan player really, really impressed me. That when Wisp was winning, it was usually on the back of those two players. So we move over to Group D. Houston Outlaws, they're really good. We knew this was coming. They have, I would say, more flexible and just powerhouse talent than the Boston Uprising. Because Boston has great players in certain roles, Houston has a lot of flexibility and can get away with probably just playing the 5 players that they primarily did, with Gargoyle sitting on the bench for most of the time. And, Violet and Shu, pretty good, as we expected. But the most important thing for them is that Violet can flex around where necessary. He can play that Lucio when they want to play fast. He can switch over to that, Kiriko, if necessary, can play that Ana Zenyatta. So they really just were flexing their muscles a little bit. Probably a little bit too much flexing when it came to the match up against Redbird Esports, where they just played some of the most heinous compositions I've ever seen. The Violet Moira, the Fearless Roadhog, went crazy. But unfortunately, here we are. Toronto Defiant looked pretty solid. Overall, they went toe-to-toe with pretty much every single team and were by far the better team, except for against the Houston Outlaws. But, I think it's going to be a learning experience. Overall, the big takeaway for me with Toronto was Kalusia's Winston actually looks quite solid. Speedily's Tracer is very, very good. For me, with this team, I've actually feel like I've learned more about them from watching the USA World Cup trials, because a lot of the Toronto Defiant are going to be in the Team USA World Cup. And these players are honestly at some of their top form that we've ever seen them in the league. Hydron going absolutely crazy. We have OG and Ultraviolet. Ultraviolet's Ana it's close to being one of the best in the world right now. I no doubt, from what I've been watching so far in the Pro-Am and the Overwatch World Cup trials, he is absolutely crazy on that Ana. And if OG can add some flexibility, I think that's going to make an incredible duo. But even if that's not necessary, they have Sir Margette in their back pocket. So Toronto's looking very solid. Will they be able to compete with your Atlanta Reigns and Houston Outlaws as time goes on? That's really the big question for this team. Or are they going to just be sort of that gatekeeper team from the top tier? Are they going to be that gatekeeper team just sort of sitting at 4th or 5th? We'll have to see more. This bracket upcoming will be a great indicator for that. Twisted Minds turned a lot of heads playing that Pharah style, Lambda. We expected them to play the Pharah. I called it going into it that I thought that the Twisted Minds Pharah style could catch teams off guard. Unfortunately for them, Houston and Toronto dealt with it pretty well. Houston did a little bit of trolling in the first map against Twisted Minds, but after that, Houston kind of showing that they can deal with it. But Twisted Minds just really, they showed some flexibility and not just being a Pharah one-trick team, but they definitely are their best when they can play that Pharah style. I was also thoroughly impressed with the New York Excelsior. When you can put just their best 5-6 players in the lineup, you got your Fitz, you got Psycho, you got Shockwave in the front line. That covers a lot of bases. In general, I'd like them to never sub out Fitz. I think he's their best player. But I think it looked pretty solid. Kellen was good, but this is kind of a meta design for his hero pool. I'm a little worried what's going to happen if the meta goes more towards off tanks and Kellen's not going to be as comfortable as the only tank on this roster. And then I think Creative and Lep, they have synergy from the past. They played together on the Houston Outlaws, they've been in the same team on the Houston Outlaws. I think both of those players are quite solid. So, New York Excelsior probably better than we were giving them credit for, considering how their offseason actually went. But it's hard to give them props when they don't even have a coach announced. So we will see. At the end of the day, we don't have a lot of information on what the NYXL roster is going to look like as a whole. Look strong on map 1 and fizz it out the rest of the series. And, that's the question of, is New York Excelsior going to struggle as time goes on? But let's talk about the bracket. Let's move on. That's all the teams. That's what we've learnt over the last 2 weekends. So now this upcoming weekend on Saturday and Sunday, PST times, we will have this single elimination best of 5. I believe it's best of 7 for the grand finals as well. Tournament structure. So let's do this bracket. Big shout outs to Solomon, who is always carrying the Overwatch League in terms of providing brackets, all that type of stuff, power rankings and stuff. So Florida Mayhem versus the London Spitfire. Personally, for me, I have to go with the Florida Mayhem. London have been heavily leaning on that Winston style, but I think they're going to struggle. Florida Mayhem are hyper aggressive. They kind of popularized this Ana Kiriko style that we've started to see a lot of other teams adopt. And RuPaul's Kiriko is just crazy, the amount of value that he gets on that character. Then you have, Chorong, a main support player who can play Ana at a very high level, and someone's just dictating the flow of the tempo. London Spitfire might struggle to deal with that level of aggression. So for me, it has to be Florida Mayhem, and I'm going to add scores. I'm going Florida Mayhem 3-1. I'll give London a map. I don't think London is going to play a lot of the Brawl style. We've seen a lot of teams lean towards the Ramatra because it just has more flexibility and does better against the Winston style. So I think the Reinhardt Brawl on certain situations can be quite good, but overall I think Ramatra is just a more well-rounded pick, but they're going to struggle to deal with the aggression of the Florida Mayhem. Then we have the Boston Uprising taking on the Toronto Defiant. I personally am just, I talked about this on Plat Chat. My heart of heart doesn't believe in the Boston Uprising. Maybe it's the fact that they've taken the old Washington Justice, management, and I can't look past that of what we've seen from previous seasons and how they've fumbled talent in the past. Right now, it feels like Boston is just out-mechanicking everyone that they've played against. This is where the true test is going to come in this finals bracket. Toronto Defiant have the players to be able to match up, but do I think that Toronto can match up and beat the Boston Uprising? I'm actually going to say no for right now. I think I wanted to go a little spicy on Plat Chat, but I'm going to be more reasonable on my own video, unfortunately. I think that Boston, this is just a good meta for Boston. Right now, this isn't a great meta for Toronto, in my opinion. It's not a bad meta, but it's not a great meta for them. I think in a situation where they can play Lucio, or they can play something where Kalush is more comfortable, Toronto's going to be better, but Boston Uprising almost has every single one of their players on their best heroes. They have Smurf on the Winston, they have Twilight on Ana, they have Izzyaki on the Kiriko, an aggressive style character that he's able to play. You can also switch over to that Zenyatta, we saw that. Decay on the Tracer, Birdring going crazy on the hit scan. I think this is just too good of a meta for Boston Uprising that I think it would be hard for them to fumble this. So I'm going to go Boston Uprising, but I'm going to call it close. We're going to go 3-2 for Boston. Birdring greater than Hydron. And actually, I want to address this in this video because I feel like right now, we've seen Birdring play 4 games, right? Only one of them was really against a solid team. And I feel like people are acting as if Birdring is currently just the best hit scan in the league. Hydron has been absolutely sick lately. Last year, and even for the Toronto Defiant this year so far, I think too many people right now are just jumping on the Birdring bandwagon that I think he's getting overrated for what he has shown thus far. Yeah, he's sick. Yeah, he's a mechanical warlord. Yes, he's one of the best players to ever touch the game. But I think it is being over-exaggerated how much he is back, and I want to see more from him, and I think this bracket will really be the defining factor of, is Birdring back? Because if he pounds in this bracket, I'm all on the Birdring hype train with you people. But right now, I think there's a little bit too much just snap judgment of where Birdring is, considering he's only really played against one good team, which is a struggling Los Angeles Gladiators and a struggling Kai. So when this matchup, comes up against better players of, he's going to have to play against Hydron, then he's going to have to go up against Merit. And then if they make it that step further, someone on like the Atlanta Reign of like Lip, right? If Birdring holds his own against Lip, hey, fuck it, I'm in, right? But over-exaggerated right now.
Wobble, wobble, motherfucker.
They're nanoing Birdring. They're putting a lot of resources into Birdring. I think I want people to temper their judgments because I feel like people are snap judging into it too quickly right now, which, obviously he's a fan favorite. We all love Birdring, but let's just slow our roll. Houston Outlaws versus the San Francisco Shock. I'm going to go 3-1. I'll go San Francisco Shocker map because they look good when Proper just plays Tracer. They could probably play Tracer Sombra somewhere that looked quite good for them. But overall, there was a Reddit thread that just came out today where Finn sort of said, someone asked him, what are your expectations for the rest of the Prime? Are you confident? And he pretty much said, no, we're still stuck, playing on high ping in our places, not together. It just got announced from Andy Miller, who's I actually don't know his title at the San Francisco Shock, but a high up in San Francisco Shock saying they will be in North America starting next week, but that is after the Pro-Am. So the Shock is still playing on ping. They still have to work through all those issues. They're not getting over the Houston Outlaws. I think Outlaws look quite solid. Houston don't seem to care as much as some of these other teams, but Houston still has all the advantages going for them right now. Atlanta Reign versus the Los Angeles Gladiators. This is the match that I think is going to be a blowout. This is going to be the problem of like Atlanta Reign aren't going to struggle against the Gladiators, and the Gladiators are going to struggle. I think they've been getting through this tournament by just being great players and being a good team overall. But I think Atlanta Reign's gonna match them and then just have a much better coordination to deal with it as well. So Atlanta Reign 3-0 over the Gladiators. I'd be pleasantly surprised if Gladiators made this a close match. He's the owner of NRG. There you go. Florida Mayhem versus the Boston Uprising. This is really when I think Florida's going to meet the most resistance of like the coordination of Florida Mayhem might start to just fall flat with how much damage is going to come from the backline with how aggressive someone likes to play where he dives, gets in your face, he gets a lot of resources. When you're playing against Twilight Izayaki or, Twilight and Lee Jae-gon, there's going to be a lot of pressure coming onto him in the way that he hasn't had to deal with some of these previous matches. So I think this is where the Florida Mayhem might find their limit. Dude, am I really going to send Boston Uprising to the grand finals? I fought for this so heavily for it to not happen in my bracket, but this is your Boston. Yeah, that's right. This is my Boston Joker arc. This will be as far as I go for Boston. I'm not going to give them. I'm actually going to give it to Florida. I'm going to say it's a close series, but I think Boston do not have as good of a strategy as Florida Mayhem, and I think Florida's going to go far in this tournament. I think they look the best drilled and the most practiced. Then we go Houston Outlaws versus the Atlanta Reign. I'm going to go 3-1 for the Atlanta Reign. Houston are solid, but I think Atlanta just look, in the same way of Florida Mayhem. I think Florida Mayhem and Atlanta Reign have come in the most scrimmed. They look like they've been scrimming for the longest. We know that they've been scrimming for a very long time. They're comfortable in this meta. I'm going to go 3-1 for the Atlanta Reign over the Houston Outlaws. I think this is where the Outlaws' just ability to just diff teams sort of is going to fall short. So we'll see. But I'm going to go for Atlanta Reign. Atlanta Reign is definitely one of the strongest ones. Then Atlanta Reign versus the Florida Mayhem. I think it's going to be 4-1. This is how high. And I think this is an important thing to note. This is how high I am on Atlanta Reign right now. Like, I just really think Atlanta Reign is just that much better than a lot of these other teams right now. I would love to be proven wrong, but right now, I'm full on that Atlanta hype train. Yeah, their group wasn't that strong. Like, they only had to beat London, Saints, Valiant, Vegas Eternal. But they made it look like it wasn't even anything, right? Like, in situations where, Outlaws lost 2 maps, they got pushed by contenders teams, you got to see some little bits of weakness. I don't think it was that... It was so decisive that's why I have that level of confidence. So... we will see. But that is my bracket for the Pro-Am. You guys can do your own if you go over to this URL that you can see in the top, prez.slmn.io/proam. You can go make your own. Post it at me in the comments if you'd like to do that. Tell me that I'm crazy for not believing in the Gladiators, or Houston Outlaws will beat those frauds, the Atlanta Reign, or you're a hater of the Boston Uprising. That's what this is all for. You know, it's also to be able to have a pre-season prime event where we get to see these top teams sort of show some basic looks of their roster before we head into the full season. So this is the last time we will ever see this meta. We have Lifeweaver, who's going to be coming out. I don't think he's going to have that much impact, but I will make a video about that next week. Once we've able to get our hands on Lifeweaver, I've been able to sort of feel him out a little bit more. But overall, that's it for the Prime. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. I got lots of VOD reviews and all that type of stuff coming once we actually get into the regular season. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.